These characters are not appearing in the Super Smash Bros. Roster anytime soon. Nintendo has been making games since the early 80s and has amassed a huge library of games and characters. With such a huge stable, it's inevitable that some of their characters will be forgotten. Nintendo is a company that likes to pay homage to its history, but sometimes even they forget. These characters are not the most obscure. I could easily pick a random enemy or character from a game that nobody has ever heard of, but I deliberately picked characters which were large parts of their respective games. If they had been popular or Nintendo had pushed them, they could have easily joined the ranks of the big hitters today. These are my top 5 forgotten Nintendo characters. The current star of the Donkey Kong franchise, Donkey Kong, is not actually the original Donkey Kong from arcades. Instead, he is the grandson of that Donkey Kong, with that character being Cranky Kong. It isn't really explained how Mario has not aged in that time span, but I digress. The second arcade game that was released in the series was Donkey Kong Jr., which featured Cranky's son, and this is the character which is not heard about today. He doesn't appear in any of the modern games, being reduced to cameos in the background. Seriously, go on a Wikia to look at his appearances since Super Mario Kart, and the word cameo appears numerous times. Donkey Kong Jr. is a pretty unimaginative character, just looking like his dad wearing a white shirt with a huge J on it and having a much goofier face. Nintendo seemingly had the idea that this would be a marketable character for them. They couldn't use the original DK as their main character going forward since he was the bad guy, but creating a new hero would clearly be a win and could be a mascot for the company. It didn't turn out that way, and now the idea that Donkey Kong Jr. will ever be anything but an element of Nintendo's past is fading away. For some reason, the Donkey Kong series was almost made for this list, with 2 of the protagonists from the original 3 games appearing. Stanley is the protagonist of the oft-forgotten, in itself, Donkey Kong 3, the worst selling and least fondly remembered of the arcade trio. Stanley was a character that fought off insects from his greenhouse using an insect repellent, but also for some reason a giant gorilla too. It didn't make sense to gamers then, and it doesn't make much more sense now. Stanley is a pretty unremarkable character, and for all intensive purposes he's just a regular guy protecting his plants from insane creatures, and the fact that Donkey Kong 3 failed meant that it was unlikely Nintendo would ever want to use him in another game. They haven't, and apart from appearing in minigame compilations and as a trophy in Smash Bros, Stanley is all but forgotten as a Nintendo protagonist. Wart is the main antagonist from Super Mario Bros. 2, one of the few enemies Mario has faced against in his main games, apart from Bowser and Wario. Wart is a big green toad-like creature wearing a crown and cape and being pretty overweight. Wart has a gang called the 8 Bits, featuring Birdo and Mouser amongst others, and uses an object called the Dream Machine to take over a world called Subcon, which must be saved by Mario and the gang. Before it's revealed, it was potentially all a dream. There are 2 pretty obvious reasons why Nintendo may have wanted to forget this character. The first is that he was from Mario 2, which was a sprite swap of Doki Doki Panic, a game that had nothing to do with Super Mario, and Mario Bros. 2 was only meant for Western audiences rather than Japanese. The second is that because it was a dream, the character may have technically not even existed, so to include him in further games may have required some creative thinking. That being said, the fact that he doesn't even get a trophy in Smash Bros, despite being the main antagonist in Mario Bros. 2, should tell you a lot about Nintendo's opinion of the character. Mario has Wario, Luigi has Waluigi, but who does Yoshi have? Well, he has Boshy, of course. Boshy is a blue Yoshi with an attitude, wearing a spiked collar and big black sunglasses. Appearing in Super Mario RPG, Boshy was a bad dude who was the best racer in all of Yoshi's home island, and then reigned over them due to his racing superiority. After Mario intervenes and helps Yoshi defeat Boshy in a race, he loses his grip of the island and becomes a better dinosaur. I'm not really sure why Nintendo didn't keep on rolling with this character. They could have easily used him in many of their future games, and there's no reason why he wouldn't have fit in with Wario and Waluigi in many of the games they appear in. He could have even been a power-up in the Wario Land series of games. His design is pretty 90s and generic, but to be honest, he's no more derivative than Waluigi is. It's clear that Nintendo has forgotten about this character. He was made to fill a questline in a single game and not for any other purpose. One day, they may decide to bring him back, and I would be pleased to see it, but I doubt it's going to happen anytime soon. Kirby is one of Nintendo's most famous characters, but unlike many of Nintendo's other lineup, he doesn't really have a consistent partner. Mario has Luigi, DK has Diddy, but who does Kirby have? Well, at one point, he had Kirby. Kirby was introduced in Kirby's Dream Course as a secondary playable character, being a yellow version of Kirby and having identical abilities. Kirby is such a forgotten character that Nintendo created a literal identical one to him later on called Yellow Kirby, which according to several sources is actually a different character. It's quite the achievement in forgetfulness that the same character is developed twice and even loses their name. Yellow Kirby has appeared in far more games, but Kirby is the one I wanted to end on. Kirby is forgotten footnote to time, the Luigi that never was. That was my list of 5 of Nintendo's forgotten characters. There are of course plenty more to pick from, so if there are any which you think should get a chance to shine, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel so you can get future content popping up in your YouTube feed. Additionally, any ideas for future videos is very much appreciated. Goodbye!